biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
What's up, everybody? You are listening to Locked On Now, local experts on the biggest stories throughout the NFL. I'm your host, Daniella Bruce, and thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. On today's show, the thought of a loss in Week 8 could spook even the toughest characters in the NFL. So what are the biggest keys to making sure your team gets a win on Halloween? Let's find out. We'll start with the biggest game.
The biggest game.
The Pittsburgh Steelers seem to have righted the ship, at least somewhat, with 2 straight wins to get back to 3-3 on the season. But we know a 500 record still has Pittsburgh in last place in the AFC North. The Cleveland Browns, who currently sit at 3rd in the AFC North, are next on the schedule for the Steelers. Both teams are feeling pretty good about themselves coming off a Week 7 win. But Locked On Steelers says the best way to beat the Browns is to apply pressure on the defense.
I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast, and here's your biggest key for the Steelers getting a win against the Cleveland Browns on Sunday in their Week 8 matchup. The Steelers taking on the Browns, who are a team that has had to find a way to struggle through several different injuries. They found a big win on Thursday Night Football and kind of get a short bye week after that game, but for the Steelers to win this game, they have to find a way to force their quarterback to beat him. Whether it's Baker Mayfield off of an injury or Case Keenum, those are the guys that need to beat the Steelers, not the Browns' run game. They proved last week with Ernest Johnson that they can run the ball with anybody. And if Nick Chubb's back, they know that's going to be an even bigger problem. The Steelers' defense struggled against the run event against Alex Collins and the Seahawks. Look for that to be the biggest key, fixing that to stop the Browns and hopefully get a victory in Week 8. For more, watch the Locked On Steelers podcast on YouTube. Listen to us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Odyssey.
The Chargers spent last week taking a beating from the Ravens and probably haven't forgot about getting demolished by the Patriots 45-0 last season. But that's all in the past now. And it's a new quarterback for New England facing LA this time around. Locked On Chargers says the key to beating the Pats is attacking those places that rookie quarterback Mac Jones leans on most.
After suffering one of the worst losses in franchise history last season to the Patriots 45-0, I know there's going to be no shortage of motivation for this Chargers team to avenge that loss. This is David Drogemeyer of the Locked On Chargers podcast, and the biggest key to victory in this game is to make sure you pay very close attention to the Patriots' running backs and tight ends, because the running backs and tight ends make up for about 83% of the Patriots' offensive attack. If you're able to eliminate the tight ends and running backs who they use in both the running game and the passing game, then I think the Chargers will have a very good chance to beat the Patriots on Sunday. But for more on this game and for more on the Chargers, please check out Locked On Chargers, your team every day.
The New York Jets face a tall task this weekend when the red-hot Bengals come to town. New York is still treating the wounds from a 40-point loss to the Patriots last week, and Locked On Jets lets you know how New York puts together a better effort. It would be pretty hard to put together anything much worse this week.
Can the Jets get a turnover? I'm John from Locked On Jets, and the key to victory this week for the New York Jets is making big plays on defense. The Jets defense has forced only 4 turnovers this season. Only Jacksonville has less, and the Jets are the only team in the entire NFL without an interception so far in 2021. That needs to change. The offense has been struggling, and backup quarterback Mike White gets the start on Sunday. Zach Wilson is injured, and Joe Flacco will not be ready on time. The Jets just traded for Flacco. That means that the Jets may need to score some non-offensive touchdowns to win, which requires the defense to make big plays. For more on the Jets, tune in to Locked On Jets.
More Locked On Now is coming up shortly, and we are going to take a look around the league, so make sure you stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Locked On Now, everybody. I'm your host, Daniella Bruce, and it is time to take a look around the AFC and what we can expect this coming Sunday.
Let's go around the league.
The Tennessee Titans suddenly have a huge target on their back, but I guess that's what happens when you take down the Bills and the Chiefs in back-to-back weeks with expectations as high as ever. Locked On Titan tells you how Tennessee makes sure it doesn't slip up in Indianapolis this weekend.
Tyler Rowland here, host of the Locked On Titans podcast, with your Tennessee Titans key to victory for a Week 8 matchup on the road against the Indianapolis Colts. It's simple for the Titans. They need to run the football. The Titans have been one of the only teams in the NFL to consistently have success on the ground against this version of the Indianapolis Colts. And as a matter of fact, Derrick Henry has gone over 100 rushing yards 4 matchups in a row against the Colts. If the Titans want to sweep the Colts this year and close the door on the AFC South, they will need to run the ball with success and put the ball in the belly of the MV King, Derrick Henry. For more analysis, make sure to check out the Locked On Titans podcast on whatever platform you do stream. And thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day.
The Jacksonville Jaguars make a cross-country trip this week to play the Seattle Seahawks. And our Locked On Jaguars host says managing that, along with sticking to the proven game plan, can help Jacksonville beat a stumbling Seattle team.
Hey, this is Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars with the keys to victory for Jacksonville this weekend. First, they got to travel well, and a lot of teams that have gone out to the West Coast, specifically the Jaguars, have not done well when they travel to California or Seattle from the East Coast of the South. The second thing is they have to try to find a way to continue their momentum that they got in the victory against the Dolphins in London and coming off of a bye week. I think the way they have to do that is to just know who they are, trust themselves, continue to make good plays on defense, don't make dumb plays, get the Seahawks off the field on third down, and then on offense, know who you are. Lead with Trevor Lawrence, lead with James Robinson, and sprinkle in a little bit of Jamal Agnew and Marvin Jones Sr., and I think they'll come away with the victory on Sunday in Seattle.
The Broncos continue to slide down the standings with a 4th straight loss to the Browns in Week 7, but they return home in Week 8 with a chance to take advantage of a Washington team who has lost 3 in a row itself. There are a lot for both teams to figure out still this season, but Locked On Broncos is in with what Denver has to focus on for Sunday afternoon.
The Denver Broncos' biggest key to victory this weekend against the Washington football team will be a two-edged sword here as it pertains to the rushing attack. I'm Cody Rourke, host of Locked On Broncos, and for the Broncos to have success against the Washington football team, they must be able to embrace the run game. We've said it week in and week out. Get Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams both going. You have to get the run game going because teams are forcing the Broncos to pass, and it's playing into the opposing defense's hand here. On the other side of things, the Broncos defense gave up a lot of yards on the ground, 182 against the Cleveland Browns. And Dearness Johnson, you have to stop that because now you're going to be facing Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick. If the Broncos can slow down the rushing attack here of the Washington football team, and if they can get the run game going, they have a great chance at coming out on top with a victory.
The Kansas City Chiefs went through some of the best teams in the AFC to start the season and came out of games against the Titans, the Bills, the Chargers, and the Ravens with 4 losses. Monday night under the lights at home against the Giants seems like the perfect recipe for Patrick Mahomes and company to bounce back. Locked On Chiefs tells us how Kansas City can end Week 8 on a high note.
Just don't give it away. That's the key for the Kansas City Chiefs this week. I'm Ryan Tracy from Locked On Chiefs, and it all comes down to that fact. All the analytics that you want to look at all point back to the same thing. If the Chiefs offense controls the ball and doesn't turn it over, not only would this record currently be different, but victories are more easy to attain in the future and will come. It all comes down to that. Ball security is the name of the game, whether it's the quarterback, the running back, the wide receivers. Everybody's been coughing it up. They just got to take care of business and hold on to that ball. That is the number one, quite frankly, maybe the only key. I guess you could figure out the defense as well, but that's what it's going to take for the Chiefs to get a win this particular week. We'll have more for you all week long over on Locked On Chiefs.
And that's a wrap for us. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Now your first listen every day. For more on the National Football League and your team, make your second listens Locked On NFL and your team's local Locked On podcast. I'm Daniella Bruce, and this has been Locked On Now. We'll see you next time.